My DMT trips, as I think I mentioned this too, I've given it to some Tibetan guys, and they said, you can't go further than that and return. What he actually said was, it's the lesser lights. The lesser lights appear at the beginning of the bardo. The thing about DMT, and we didn't talk about it much this weekend, is that it is an inhabited space. A huge percentage of the people who take it encounter entities of some sort in there, not entities like wombats and foxes, but entities with intelligence of some sort, with language of some sort. Well, remember I talked about the principle of parsimony, of preferring the simplest explanation first? Well, when you have a drug which conveys you into an inhabited space, even the simplest explanation is going to be pretty baroque. Some people, including myself, wanted to leap to the conclusion, well, these must be the aliens. We finally found their hive. It isn't under the Atlantic Trench. It isn't inside Mount Everest. They're hiding inside this organic molecule. But I think in service of the principle of parsimony, preferring the simplest explanation, these things must be human souls. It's easier for me to believe in the human soul than to believe in a colony of extraterrestrials camped inside an alkaloid. But it's not that easy for me to believe in human souls. But still, the feeling you have from these things is one of immense affection for humanity. That wouldn't come from a diplomatic mission from Zenebel Ganubi. This intense love, and so I dare to hope, having deconditioned myself from my Catholic childhood and gone through existentialism and all that, now I dare to hope that maybe there is some kind of existence beyond the grave. One of the funny feelings, there are a number of, how could you call it, thematic layers in the DMT experience, but one of the thematic layers is, weird as this place is that you burst into, it's somebody very strange worked very hard to produce a place that they thought would be reassuring to a human being. And the analogy, it's stronger than an analogy. The feeling that comes through is, this is like a maternity ward. It's as though you're being born. And these marvelous, self-transforming, Fabergé, crystalline 4D toys that they're handing out in this space may be, to them, nothing more than the equivalent of those extruded plastic geometric shapes that we hang on a string over a bassinet. And if you ask a child psychologist, why do we do this? They say, well, it coordinates the child's ability to see spatial and so forth and so on. It's very like that. You have been born into an alien world, and the only thing you can do is gape, basically gape in utter amazement. And everyone is surrounding you, and they're saying, welcome, it's okay, be happy. Well, then if it is like a maternity ward, then one can know as much about whatever universe that is as one could deduce about this universe from looking at the four walls of a maternity ward in a small hospital in, say, Salinas. In other words, if you were to actually die rather than smoke DMT, then if we follow this model, then you would be in that place, but there would be no going back to this world after 5 minutes. Instead, there would be the next 5 minutes in that place, followed by the next 5 minutes. And I can tell within hours you would be beyond the reach of all anything you have ever called humanness or thought of. In other words, this isn't a world where one comes back and whispers in the ears of people and bangs doors in the middle of the night. It appears like once out of the body, this incredibly enfolded and compacted field called the soul begins to unfold into its death rite, I suppose you could say. And quickly one would become incomprehensible to this world, and all that is retained is the affection for us in our limited situation. Of course, thinking along these lines, I've looked at the literature of near-death experience. What those people are describing is something far more mundane than a DMT trip. Either they are dumbing down the DMT trip and suppressing the oddness of it, or they're having a quite different experience, because what's being said in the near-death thing, generally, is a tunnel, and then loving relatives, reassuring and familiar people. The DMT thing is a tunnel, but it isn't loving relatives waiting at the end. It's a welcoming committee of professional midwives, and they help you through. So I would suggest, without great heat, that if we want to study the near-death and after-death experience, that actually you come far closer to dying, whatever that means, on DMT than you do in drownings and things like that. Well, any situation can be looked at from a point of view that reveals the whole fractal. In other words, what it's saying is experience is holographic on one level, but linearly sequential on another level. In a way, this leads into, or this is a continuation of this discussion of death, because if we leave off the historical modeling and turn toward the modeling of an individual life with the time wave, then again there is a message of hope. It says the most novel and amazing thing that will ever happen to you is the last thing that will ever happen to you. And I would like to believe that. I would like to believe that we gather our experience, we become wiser, we meet people, life becomes more novel, we have children, they have children, we have success, we have failure. Our life, you just get, if you're living right, your life should just get more and more baroque, beautiful, complicated, mysterious, and then you die. And then it really gets interesting.